Okay, so to begin, you are going to need a digital thermometer. This is my clean glass jar that is dedicated to this scent, which is cucumber melon. You'll need your fragrance, which this is my Candle Science candle fragrance oil. I also make some of my candles with just pure essential oils from Pro Candle Supply. Then we have our golden wax. It's 100% soy wax. We have our plastic cup that I use to scoop the wax out into my melting container, which is placed on a scale. So we're doing 6 4-ounce candles. So we have our candles here. We're going to put our wax in here. The wax, when it's in its flake form, will almost fill this container, but once it's melted, will only be like down to here, which is why we can only do 6 at a time. We have our lids, our caution stickers, our wicks, our hot glue gun for attaching our wicks. There's my Gorilla Glue sticks in the back. I've used a lot of different ways to, I've tried all the different ways to attach wicks. I've tried the wax where you put the little ball of wax on the end and stick it in. I've tried the stickers. The stickers actually work pretty well, but I found that the one that works the best and is most cost efficient is just plain old hot glue. Okay, so we're going to start by measuring out our wax. So I have this nice big bag of wax. I'm going to turn it on my scale and I'm going to turn it to ounces. So I have 6 4-ounce jars. 6 times 4 is, come on all you homeschooling moms right now, 6 times 4 is 24. So we're going to do 24 ounces of wax into my wax melter. 12, 13, 22 and a half, 24.2. That's pretty close. 0.02. Alright, so as you can see, probably, it's pretty full with just that. And that's enough to do this many candles. So, quite a bit of wax. My hot glue gun is heating up right now. I'm going to go ahead and add some water to my pan. I have a low flow water saving spigot, so it takes a little while to get water. So I have about an inch to an inch and a half of water in the bottom of this pan. Go ahead and turn my stove to medium high and just stick that right there. Yeah, start getting going. So I'm done with the scale for right now. We can close up our wax. First step was putting up my hair, because the last thing anyone wants in their candle is hair. Almost as bad as getting hair in your food. You get hair in your candles. We all know what burnt hair smells like. That's not a very relaxing scent. Alright, so I have my candle wick. I'm going to put just a little dab right here in the middle. And then stick it right in the middle of my candle. And then I use this large popsicle stick to push it down securely, because it's a little small for my hands to get into. Look at that. Such a perky wick. So, and then we'll just repeat that on all 6 candles. Alright, so now all of my wicks are in. So I'm going to take the jars, and while they're empty, because that's the easiest time to do this, I'll take my warning sticker, which I just ordered off of, you can get these on Candle Science, you can get them on Pro Candles, you can get them on Amazon. They're available everywhere. Just candle warning stickers. And they say, to prevent fire and serious injury, burn candle away from within sight. Keep away from drafts and vibrations, you know, all that safety stuff, just to cover your tail. So put that on the bottom of all of our candles before we fill them with wax because it's easier that way. Okay, so you can see that my water is boiling now. I've got my pot in my little makeshift double boiler. It's gone down significantly because the wax is starting to melt. You can see the liquid wax in there. And so I just use these little, they're like barbecue skewers that have a thick side and then to a thinner side. And I use that to kind of break up the wax. I used to go to the hardware store and steal their paint stir sticks, which work great. But I started feeling a little guilty about that. So these work just fine. We're just going to stir that up. Once it gets a little more liquidy, then we will come in with our thermometer. So we have our digital thermometer. I'm going to turn it on, clip it to the side. You can see that there's kind of a permanent kink in it right there where I clip it to the side of the pot. And we want to keep it away from the bottom and the edges, but we want to know when the wax reaches 185 degrees. That's the magic number. We want it to reach 185 degrees before we remove it from the heat. So if we get it that hot, then it will ensure that all of the wax is completely melted, it's uniform in its consistency, and will give you the smoothest candle. If you don't get it to the right temperature, then they tend to like separate and they crack and they do all sorts of weird crazy things. So 185. Alright, so while the wax is melting down, you can see on our candle fragrance, it's going to tell you for candles you want to use 3 to 10% candle fragrance to wax. That's our perfect ratio. So I use my scale here, right? Got my little Indian scale with my glass jar that's only used for the cucumber melon, which smells amazing, by the way. It kind of reminds me of, middle school in the 90s. So we have 24 ounces of wax. I can use 2.4 ounces of fragrance. So I'm going to go ahead and use just about 2 ounces of fragrance. I like it to be pretty strong with this fragrance because it's not an overwhelming fragrance, and if we don't put enough in, it doesn't carry well enough. So you'll see that some fragrances you use closer to the 3%, some you use closer to the 10%. It really depends on the fragrance and how much you want that fragrance to throw. Alright, so my boiling got a little crazy there, popped out, tried to get me. We're going to look in here and you can see that most of the wax is melted. There's some big chunks still in there. That's why we definitely want to get it up to the 185. So I'm going to go ahead and stick my thermometer in there. It's hard to do with just the one hand. Alright, so I got my thermometer in there. Steamed up my camera lens. I'm going to put a clip on it, and then I can stir and get it kind of away from the edge in order to get a good reading. So we'll turn our thermometer on to temperature, not time. Helps if the probe is plugged all the way in. There we go. So it says it's at 180, but if I stir and move that around, you can see it drops a little bit. So it's important to stir to get a 100% accurate reading. Get that away from the edge and the bottom. Just like if you were cooking meat, you don't want to stick it all the way through to the bottom of the meat. You want it right in the middle of the meat for the best temperature. So we're going to let this heat up to 185 and then we'll remove it from the heat and put it on a heat pad. Alright, so We got up to where it's 185 when I'm stirring. Well, 187, it's getting hotter. So we don't want it to get too hot. We'll go ahead and take that out of the water. And then I'm going to go right over here to my fragrance one and pour it in. This motion is going to cool the wax down significantly faster. Pour it all in. So this is a 4-cup measuring cup. So now we're going to move our thermometer to this one. So now we're going to let this wax sit and cool until it reaches 160 degrees. So it dropped down to 160. I just wanted to show how when I stir it, it goes back up to 174. So even though it was reading like 150, 160, it really isn't that cool. It's just because of how the thermometer sits in the wax and how the wax cools in different spots faster. So make sure that you're stirring your wax to get an accurate read on the temperature. We don't want to add the fragrance at too high of a temperature because it is an oil. So if the temperature of the wax is too high when we add it, it'll just burn off that oil and we will have really weak fragrance to our candles. So once this reaches 160, we will add our fragrance, and to make sure it's thoroughly integrated into all of the wax and it's going to be a nice consistent fragrance throughout, I set a timer for 2 minutes. I actually physically set a timer on my microwave and stir gently. We don't want to create air bubbles or any weird stuff in there, but I stirred the fragrance into the wax for a full 2 minutes, and by then the temperature should be down to about 145, 150, which is where I like to pour it. So I will go ahead and pour it at that time. Alright, so we're down to 160. I have my fragrance oil. I'm going to go ahead and slowly pour that in. And set my timer for 2 minutes. And then we'll be back to pour. Alright, so our timer just went off. It's been 2 minutes. Our wax is at 145, which is exactly where I like to pour. So I'm going to go ahead and take my thermometer stick out and stick it on some aluminum foil so that I can sanitize it with the isopropyl alcohol before I stick it into my next batch of wax, which is already currently melting in the makeshift double boiler. So I'll take out my stir stick. I get to use that stir stick for my next batch because they are all the same fragrance, which is nice. Alright, so we're going to go in now and pour our candles. Nice slow pour. We want to go all the way up to the inner lip. So it's a nice full candle. There we go. So now we are going to set this down, and I'm going to take my clothespins, which I just got from the Dollar Tree. Okay. And in here you have this little hole. Oops, sorry, that's not in focus. You have a little hole right there in the middle. So I'm going to clamp my wick into that and then fold it over tight. So I'm going to open it, make sure my wick is in the middle of my hole, and then slide down and clip that end. And that's going to make it so that my wick stays in the middle of my candle as it cools. So notice how the thermometer is right there in the middle, clipped securely to the side of my pot with my Dollar Tree clothespin, and I can stir around and get a accurate temperature. It's not touching the bottom of the pan, not touching the side of the pan. Perfect. Okay, so my candles are still sitting here cooling. You'll notice that I have them spaced out so that they're not touching. We want to get nice airflow so that they can all cool evenly all the way around. But as you may have noticed, temperature is really important in a lot of these steps. So another reason that I forgot to mention for making sure that the wax is not hotter than 145 degrees, 145 to 147, is it will melt the glue that you use to adhere your tabs down. So if that happens, because your wax is too hot, just push it down and try your best to get it as close to the bottom. It might be something that you have to reach in with a stick and correct as it continues to cool to get it further down there. But all of mine stayed in because my wax was at 145. The other thing to remember is that we don't want these to cool too fast. So we really want to make sure that the temperature in the room or house is room temperature, which is defined as 72 degrees. All us Paul Mitchell hairdressers know that one because our color processes at room temperature 72 degrees as well. And that's my children in the background. Okay, so now we're done pouring all of our candles. So I'm going to take my isopropyl alcohol. I only have this glass jar, or this glass Pyrex container that came in contact with the fragrance, which is why I use it separately from the metal ones. So the metal ones don't ever come in contact with any fragrance. So I can make any fragrance out of that, including fragrance-free candles. So I poured a good amount of isopropyl alcohol in there, and I'm taking a clean paper towel and just rubbing the inside of it. It makes the alcohol all like cloudy as it removes the fragrance and the wax. So now that I've done all that, I can feel that the wax is gone. I'm going to pour this out, and now I can wash it in my sink with regular detergent, and it will get all nice and clean. And there it is, all sparkly clean with no wax residue or fragrance left in it. Don't forget to sanitize with the alcohol your thermostat also. So just same method, rub it with the rubbing alcohol, and then you can clean it with, I use Dawn dish soap, because it removes everything. So we're going to let these cool for probably about another hour or so until they solidify, and we can check out the tops and see how they are setting up. So there's our original ones, the ones that I just poured, and we'll check them out in an hour. Okay, so our candle has been sitting for about an hour, and you see it's firmed up. It's a beautiful milky white, but on the top there's little crackles and little indents. It's just not perfectly smooth. So that's when my heat gun comes in handy. So you can get this on Amazon. I think I got this one at Michael's. So I'm just going to take it before I trim my wick, and I'm going to melt that very top layer where the roll things are. Where is it? So now it's all melted. That very top layer is melted. It'll go into any little cracks or holes and make them all nice and smooth. So when it is done, it's a perfect candle. So I'm going to go ahead and do that to all of these. These ones still have a little bit to set. They're not completely firm yet, but the ones that we first poured are now solid, so we can go through and do this to the tops. Just trim the wick and you are good to go. I'm hoping to have these available on my website, adventuresinhairdressing.com, so check it out.